I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who'd end up writing a post like this. But here I am, pouring my heart out, hoping it'll resonate with someone out there. The story I'm about to share is one of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, the kind of revenge that transformed me into someone unrecognizable to the woman who lost me. My name is Mike, and I've been married to Sarah for 5 years. On the surface, we were that couple everyone envied, great jobs, a nice house in the suburbs, and a solid group of friends. But like all things that seem perfect, cracks started to show. I noticed small things at first. Sarah was more distant, often glued to her phone. I chalked it up to work stress or social media. I mean, who doesn't get a little lost in their phone these days? But then came the little lies. I'd ask her what she was doing and she'd give vague answers or change the subject. "Oh, just chatting with a friend," she'd say, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. I'd ask about her late nights at work, and she'd smile, brushing it off like, "It was nothing. Just a project, babe, you know how it is." I wanted to believe her, but the knot in my stomach grew tighter. It all came to a head one evening when I accidentally stumbled upon a text message while picking up her phone to check the time. There it was, an intimate conversation filled with flirty emojis and heart symbols. My heart dropped. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The message was from someone named Jake, a name I didn't recognize. I thought about how Sarah had never mentioned him and felt a cold sweat on my brow. I confronted her that night. The moment she walked through the door, I could see it in her eyes, the anxiety, the shame. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady, even though I felt like I was about to crumble. She looked at me, confusion mixing with guilt, and I knew she was trying to figure out how much I knew. "About what?" she replied, her tone too casual to be genuine. I tossed her phone onto the table, and the sound echoed in our living room like a gunshot. "About Jake," I said, my voice low and dangerous. Her face paled as she picked up the phone, and I watched as the realization hit her. "Mike, it's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "Then what is it? Because it sure looks like you've been sharing more than just friendly conversations." I could feel anger boiling inside me, but I kept it in check, fearing that if I let it out, I'd lose control. Her excuses began to pour out. She was just lonely, I had been busy with work, and she didn't mean for it to happen. I listened to her words, each one stinging like a slap to the face. It felt surreal, like I was watching a bad movie unfold before me. What had gone wrong with us? As she spoke, I tried to process everything. I thought about the compromises I had made for our relationship, the late nights spent working so we could afford our house, the weekends dedicated to her family. I wondered if all of that had meant nothing to her. I felt a mix of rage and sorrow, like I was teetering on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall into an abyss of despair. When she finally finished her excuses, I was left with a painful silence. I didn't know what to say. The trust had been shattered, and all I felt was an overwhelming sense of betrayal. I realized that the woman I had loved was slipping away from me, replaced by someone who had betrayed me for a fleeting thrill. Suddenly, I wasn't just mad, I was shattered. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt like I was drowning, caught in a tempest of confusion and anger. I had always pictured my life with Sarah as a beautiful journey, but now it felt like a dark tunnel with no exit. I couldn't understand how someone I had shared my life with could do this to me. In that moment, I knew I had a decision to make. Would I confront this head-on, or would I retreat and let the pain consume me? I started to think about what I wanted moving forward, and that's when a plan slowly began to form in the back of my mind. As I sat there, staring into the abyss that had become my marriage, I realized that I was going to need to become a stranger to her. If she could betray me so easily, then I would become unrecognizable to her, just as she had become to me. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I moved about the house like a ghost, trapped in my own thoughts. I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't shake the image of Sarah laughing with Jake, sharing inside jokes and intimate moments that should have been ours. It was suffocating, and I felt the walls of our home closing in on me. Sarah tried to reach out, showering me with affection that felt insincere. "I'm so sorry, Mike. I love you and I want to fix this," she said one night, her voice shaky as she sat by my side on the couch. I could see the genuine fear in her eyes, but it was overshadowed by the anger simmering within me. How could she claim to love me after what she had done? I needed to think clearly before making any decisions about our future. So I decided to distance myself from Sarah emotionally. I started spending more time out with friends and picking up hobbies I had neglected. I began hitting the gym more frequently, not just to work on my physical appearance but to reclaim the pieces of myself that I had lost during our marriage. I wanted to rediscover who I was, and in that process I began to feel stronger. While I was on this journey of self-discovery, I made it a point to observe Sarah. She was desperately trying to win me back, but the more she tried, the more distant I became. I watched her text Jake when she thought I wasn't looking, her face lighting up in a way that made my stomach churn. It was like I was watching a play unfold, and I was no longer an actor in it but merely an audience member. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at a bar with my friend Aaron, sharing my story over drinks. "Dude, you've got to give yourself some space," he advised, leaning back in his chair. "You're not the one who cheated. You need to do what's best for you." His words resonated with me. I realized that I didn't owe Sarah anything right now. My emotional well-being came first. I sat there, sipping my whiskey, and began to formulate a plan. It was time for me to become the stranger. I wanted to confront Sarah with a new version of myself, one that was unbreakable, one that wouldn't be a doormat for her to walk all over anymore. I decided that I would give her a taste of the emotional distance she had created. The following week, I took a day off work and got a makeover. I changed my hair, bought new clothes, and even started working on my fitness routine more seriously. I wanted to feel like a new man, someone who could turn heads. I wanted to become the version of myself that would shock her, the version that she had lost sight of while she engaged in her betrayal. When I returned home, I could see the shift in Sarah's demeanor. She didn't recognize me, not just physically but emotionally. I was no longer the man who would forgive her easily. I was the embodiment of self-respect and strength. I could see her confusion turning to desperation. She was no longer calling the shots. Sarah attempted to engage with me more often, talking about our plans and future, trying to pull me back to the life we once had. It was almost comical how hard she was trying to play the devoted wife. I played along, but inside I was plotting my next move. The more she tried to reel me back in, the more I felt empowered in my decision to keep my distance. One particularly heated evening, as she sat across from me at dinner, her eyes searching mine for any sign of reconciliation, I seized the moment. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about us," I said, my tone calm but firm, "and I think we need to have a serious discussion about what happened with Jake." Her face fell and I could see the panic in her eyes. "Mike, please, I've told you how sorry I am. I'll do anything to make it right," she pleaded. In that moment I could feel a sense of satisfaction wash over me. She was the one now pleading for my attention, not the other way around. I held my ground. "You say that now, but I can't just forget what you've done. I won't be a backup plan for you, Sarah. I deserve better." I watched her face contort with frustration as I continued. "You made your choice and now I'm making mine. I'm done with the games." Her reaction was explosive. She began to cry, pleading for a second chance, but all I felt was a sense of relief. I had stepped into my own power and it felt good. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was taking control of my life. But even as I executed this plan, I could still feel the emotional weight of the situation. There were moments when I would catch myself reflecting on the good times we shared, the love we had built, but I quickly reminded myself of the betrayal that had shattered everything. I had to stay focused on my journey of transformation and revenge, both for myself and for the woman who had lost sight of the man she once loved. The game had changed, and I was no longer just a player. I was the one setting the rules. The days turned into weeks, and my transformation began to settle in. The new me felt good, and I quickly realized how empowering it was to stand my ground. Sarah was still in a panic, desperately trying to win me back, but I had shifted the dynamic. I had become the stranger she had created when she made her choice to betray me. I started going out more, meeting new people. It was exhilarating. I no longer felt the weight of that comfortable life we had built together. Instead, I felt liberated, as if I was shedding an old skin that had suffocated me for too long. I spent time with friends, went on spontaneous adventures, and even flirted a little. The attention from other women was a nice boost to my confidence, but I didn't want to jump into anything serious. I was still processing the fallout from my marriage. One night while out with Aaron, I met a woman named Lisa at a bar. She was fun, vibrant, and refreshingly honest. We hit it off, sharing stories, laughter, and drinks. For the first time in a long while, I felt a connection that was genuine and carefree. There was no baggage, no history of betrayal, just two people enjoying each other's company. As I spent more time with Lisa, I found myself enjoying the thrill of flirting and the feeling of being desired again. It was a reminder of what I had lost with Sarah, but also a glimpse into what could be. It was refreshing to be around someone who appreciated me for who I was becoming, not who I had once been. Meanwhile, Sarah's attempts to win me back turned desperate. She started to drop hints about going to couples therapy, buying gifts, and trying to recreate our early dating days. One evening, she surprised me with a dinner, complete with our favorite dishes and candles flickering on the table. I could see she was trying to pull at my heartstrings, but I had grown immune to her manipulations. "Mike, I know I messed up. I just want to make things right," she said as we sat down to eat. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at the facade. She looked sincere, but there was a disconnect between her words and the heart of the matter. "You can't just expect me to forget about Jake and act like everything is fine. You need to prove to me that you're serious about fixing this." Her face fell, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of vulnerability that struck a chord in me. "I am serious, Mike. I don't know how to show you that," she said, her voice trembling. I imagined the emotional roller coaster she was on, and a part of me felt compassion. But then I remembered the hurt, the betrayal, and the way she had cast me aside for another man. "It's not enough, Sarah. I need more than just empty promises. You broke my trust, and trust takes time to rebuild," I replied, my tone firm. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't just going to go away because she wanted it to. I was no longer the man who would settle for half-hearted apologies. With each passing day, I felt myself distancing more from Sarah, and I was okay with that. I was beginning to see her for who she truly was, not the loving partner I had thought I knew, but someone who had made a choice that shattered our relationship. As I became more confident in my new life, I also knew it was time to let Sarah feel the reality of her actions. She needed to understand that I was moving on and that I didn't need her to be happy. One day, I received a text from Sarah while I was out with Lisa. It was a photo of us from happier times, a reminder of what we once had. I felt a pang of nostalgia, but I quickly pushed it aside. I couldn't allow myself to slip back into the past. Instead, I shared the text with Lisa, who listened patiently as I explained my situation. "You deserve someone who sees you for who you are, not someone who just wants to keep you as a backup," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. I smiled, appreciating her support. Lisa was right. Sarah had treated me like an afterthought, and I wasn't going to let her back in that easily, no matter how much she pleaded or how many memories she tried to bring back. As I continued to navigate this new chapter, I became more intentional about my actions. I started planning a weekend getaway with Lisa, a chance to escape from the chaos. It was refreshing to think about my life without Sarah looming in the background. I wanted to embrace the freedom that came with being alone and the excitement of potential new love. But there was a part of me that knew I needed to bring closure to my situation with Sarah before fully moving on. I had to confront her one last time, to make sure she understood that the man she once knew was gone. I wanted to ensure that she realized the weight of her betrayal and that I would no longer be her safety net. The next week, as I sat down with Sarah at our dining table, I could feel the tension in the air. I had to be clear and I had to be firm. "I'm not angry anymore, Sarah," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I'm just done. I'm ready to move on, and you need to do the same." Her eyes widened in shock and she shook her head. "But Mike, I want to fix this. I want to go to therapy to work things out." I could see the desperation in her voice, but I stood my ground. "I appreciate that you want to try, but I can't keep doing this. You made your choice and now I'm making mine. It's time for both of us to go our separate ways." My heart raced as I said those words, but part of me felt free. In that moment, I realized that being a stranger to her was the only way I could reclaim my identity. I was no longer the man who would forgive and forget. I was the man who would stand strong in the face of betrayal and emerge victorious. The look on her face was a mix of disbelief and sorrow, but I felt no guilt. I had taken back my power, and it felt exhilarating. I was ready to embrace the future, no matter how uncertain, with the knowledge that I had learned and grown through this painful experience. I was moving forward, and nothing was going to hold me back now. After I made the decision to end things with Sarah, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. It was as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer living in the shadow of betrayal, but rather stepping into the light of newfound freedom. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to embrace whatever came my way. Letting go of Sarah was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but it was also the most liberating. I decided to take a few days to focus on myself. I booked a weekend getaway to the mountains, a chance to clear my mind and reflect on everything that had happened. I needed to reconnect with my own thoughts and feelings, away from the chaos that had consumed my life. With each passing moment in the mountains, I found myself rediscovering who I was. I hiked through the stunning scenery, breathing in the fresh air, and allowing the beauty of nature to cleanse my spirit. I had always loved the outdoors, but my time with Sarah had made me forget how much joy it brought me. I felt alive, invigorated, and ready to face the world anew. During my time away, I reflected on the lessons I had learned from my marriage. I had come to realize that I deserved respect and trust, qualities that had been lacking in my relationship with Sarah. I had allowed myself to be vulnerable, but it was clear that vulnerability had been misused. I couldn't let that happen again. When I returned home, I was greeted by a mix of emotions. I felt stronger, more confident, and ready to take on anything life threw my way. I met up with Aaron, who had been my steadfast support throughout this journey. Over drinks, we discussed the changes I had made and how I felt like a new man. "You're doing great, man. You've come a long way," he said, raising his glass in a toast. "Here to new beginnings." I clinked my glass against his, feeling the warmth of camaraderie. But even as I celebrated my growth, I knew that I had to face the aftermath of my decision. After I got back, I had to prepare for the reality of a post-Sarah world. I was ready to move on, but I also wanted to ensure that I closed the door on that chapter of my life in a way that would allow me to fully embrace the future. One evening, after a long day at work, I received a message from Sarah. It was a simple "Can we talk?" My heart raced as I read it. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep my distance. But another part of me knew that this conversation was necessary. I needed to establish boundaries and make it clear that I was moving on. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, a neutral ground where we could talk without distractions. As I walked in, I braced myself for the encounter. Sarah was already seated at a corner table, her face pale and drawn. I could see that she had been crying, and for a moment I felt a pang of empathy. But I quickly reminded myself that empathy wouldn't change what had happened. "Hey," I said softly as I sat down across from her. The tension was palpable and I could see the turmoil in her eyes. "What did you want to talk about?" I wanted to say I'm sorry, truly. I never meant to hurt you," she replied, her voice breaking. "I know I messed up and I regret it every day." I listened, my heart feeling heavy. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but I had to keep my distance. "Sarah, I appreciate your apology, but I can't keep living in the past. I need to move on from this." Her eyes widened and she shook her head again. "But I still love you, Mike. I want to work on this. Can't we try again?" I stared at her, feeling the anger bubbling up. "Love isn't enough, Sarah. You broke my trust, and trust is essential in a relationship. Without it, there's nothing left." I could see the realization dawning on her, and it was painful to witness. "I thought we could fix this together," she said softly, tears brimming in her eyes. "I thought we could try therapy, anything. I've been through the therapy routine. I need more than that, and I need to focus on myself right now," I replied, my voice steady. It's not about you fixing things, it's about me taking control of my life moving forward. As I spoke, I felt empowered. I wasn't the man she could easily manipulate anymore. I was reclaiming my identity. I watched her face crumble, and for a second, a wave of sadness washed over me. I had loved her once, and now I was watching her fall apart. But I reminded myself that this was her doing, not mine. "I really hope you find happiness, Mike," she said finally, her voice shaky. "You deserve it." "Thank you, Sarah, I hope you do too, but it won't be with me," I replied firmly. I saw her nod slightly, accepting the reality of the situation. In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. We parted ways, and as I walked back to my car, I felt a mix of emotions. I had said what needed to be said, and I was proud of myself for standing firm. I was ready to embrace the future without the weight of my past holding me back. I couldn't forget what had happened, but I was determined to learn from it and grow stronger. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to build my new life. I reconnected with old friends and even started taking up new interests. I found joy in exploring new hobbies and meeting new people. I had learned to appreciate the freedom of being single, but I also recognized that I was ready for something new, something real. Eventually, that something new came in the form of Lisa. We had been casually dating, and I found myself drawn to her energy. Our connection felt effortless, and I loved how she celebrated me for who I was becoming. I felt a sense of excitement and possibility when I was with her that I hadn't experienced in years. As I ventured into this new relationship, I was careful not to let my past dictate my future. I was aware of the scars that lingered, but I also knew that I had the power to build something beautiful from the ashes of my old life. And as I moved forward, I was determined to make choices that honored my self-worth, ensuring that I would never find myself in a situation like the one with Sarah again. With each passing day, I felt more like the man I wanted to be, a man who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, ready to take on whatever life had in store. As I continued to navigate this new chapter of my life, I found myself growing closer to Lisa. Our connection deepened, and I felt as though I was finally emerging from the fog of my past. Lisa was everything I needed at that moment: supportive, understanding, and free-spirited. She encouraged me to be the best version of myself, and I appreciated how she celebrated my growth without any baggage from previous relationships. I began introducing her to my friends, and they immediately took to her. "She's great for you, man," Aaron said one night as we all sat around a fire pit, laughing and sharing stories. "It's good to see you happy again." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. I had been through so much, but now I could see a light at the end of the tunnel. One evening, as Lisa and I walked along a scenic path by the river, I felt a surge of affection for her. "You know, I'm really glad we met," I said, taking her hand in mine. "You've helped me see that there's more to life than what I was living." She smiled, her eyes sparkling in the fading light. "I'm glad too, Mike. I love seeing you come into your own. You deserve happiness." Her affirmation was a reminder of how far I had come since that dark period with Sarah. I had learned to prioritize my own needs and desires, and it felt liberating. But even as I enjoyed this new relationship, I couldn't ignore the lingering effects of my past. I recognized that I still had emotional scars from the betrayal that had shaken my foundation. Though I was committed to Lisa, I was careful not to let the shadows of my previous relationship overshadow our growing love. I communicated openly with her about my experiences, ensuring that we built our bond on honesty and mutual respect. One night, as we lay on a blanket under the stars, I opened up about my feelings. "I still have moments where I think about what happened with Sarah," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's hard to forget the pain of betrayal." Lisa looked at me with understanding in her eyes. "It's okay to feel that way. You've been through a lot and healing takes time. Just remember that I'm here for you whenever you need to talk." Her words were a balm for my soul, reassuring me that I didn't have to go through this alone. As the weeks passed, our relationship flourished. Lisa had a way of making even the simplest moments feel magical. We explored new restaurants, danced under the moonlight, and shared dreams about the future. With every shared laugh and whispered secret, I felt myself falling deeper for her, and it felt good to open my heart again. But amidst the happiness, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to confront Sarah one last time. I wanted to ensure that our paths wouldn't cross in unexpected ways, and that I could fully close that chapter of my life. I needed to establish boundaries that would protect my new relationship. One afternoon, I texted Sarah and asked if we could meet for coffee. I felt a mixture of nerves and resolve as I prepared for the conversation. I wanted to make it clear that I was moving on and that I had no intention of revisiting our past. When we met at a local cafe, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Sarah looked different, more put together than the last time I had seen her. She wore a smile that seemed forced, and I could sense the apprehension in her demeanor as we settled into our seats. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I wanted to talk to you about where we stand." She nodded, her expression serious. "I appreciate that. I've been thinking a lot about what you said the last time we spoke. I've had time to reflect on my actions and how they affected you." Her voice was steadier than before, but I could still see the vulnerability in her eyes. "Sarah, I'm glad you've had time to reflect, but I need you to understand something," I said, looking her in the eye. "I'm moving on with my life. I'm in a new relationship and I want to keep things clear between us. I don't want to revisit our past and I need you to respect that." Her face fell and I could see the hurt in her expression. "I understand, Mike. I really do. I just wish things could have been different." "Me too," I replied, feeling a pang of empathy. "But what's done is done and I can't change that. I need to focus on my future and I hope you can do the same." We talked for a while longer and I could sense the change in our dynamic. The desperation that had once characterized our interactions was gone, replaced by a sense of understanding. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as we concluded our conversation. I had closed the door on that chapter for good. As I walked away from the cafe, I felt lighter. I had set my boundaries, and I was ready to embrace my new life with Lisa fully. I had learned valuable lessons about self-worth, trust, and the importance of moving forward. Over the next few months, my relationship with Lisa deepened. I was amazed at how far I had come since the days of betrayal. I had transformed my pain into strength, and I was proud of the man I had become. I was grateful for the experiences that had shaped me, but I was even more excited about the future that lay ahead, one filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. The scars of my past were still there, but they no longer defined me. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was a man who had reclaimed his power, ready to embrace a life filled with joy and connection. And as I stood on the precipice of this new adventure, I knew that I was finally ready to write the next chapter of my story, one that was uniquely mine. As I settled into my new life with Lisa, I found myself reflecting on the journey I had taken since that fateful night when I discovered Sarah's betrayal. I had transformed from a man who felt lost and broken into someone who had embraced the power of self-discovery and healing. Each day felt like a new opportunity, and I was determined to make the most of it. Lisa and I continued to grow closer, sharing our dreams and aspirations openly. She had a way of making me feel valued, not just as a partner, but as an individual. She listened to my stories, my fears, and my hopes, and I found myself opening up in ways I had never anticipated. With her, I felt safe to explore my emotions without the weight of past betrayals hanging over my head. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching the sunset from our apartment balcony, I turned to Lisa. "You know, I never thought I'd be able to love again after everything that happened with Sarah, but here I am. Feeling more alive than ever," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. She smiled, her eyes brightening. "I'm really glad to hear that, Mike. You're an incredible person and you deserve all the happiness in the world. I love seeing you embrace life." Her words warmed my heart, and I realized how fortunate I was to have found someone who understood me so deeply. As we continued to build our relationship, I made it a point to keep communication open and honest. I had learned the hard way that trust was fragile, and I wanted to ensure that Lisa and I built our foundation on a bedrock of transparency. We talked about our pasts, our boundaries, and what we wanted for the future. It felt refreshing to have these conversations, knowing that we were in it together. In the following weeks, Lisa suggested we take a weekend trip to the beach. I was excited about the idea, as I hadn't taken the time to relax and unwind in ages. We packed our bags and set off on our adventure, ready to create new memories together. The beach was everything I had hoped for: sunshine, laughter, and the soothing sound of waves crashing on the shore. We spent our days basking in the sun, splashing in the water, and exploring local shops. I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years, and each moment with Lisa felt like a step away from my past and an embrace of my future. On our last evening, we shared a romantic dinner at a beachfront restaurant. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I took a moment to reflect on how far I had come. I looked at Lisa, her face illuminated by the candlelight, and felt a surge of love and appreciation for this incredible woman who had entered my life when I needed it most. "Lisa, I want you to know how much you mean to me," I said, my heart racing. "You've helped me heal and grow in ways I never thought were possible. I'm so grateful to have you by my side." Tears of joy filled her eyes as she smiled at me. "I feel the same way, Mike. I love you, and I'm so glad we found each other. You're a beautiful person, and I'm honored to be part of your life." In that moment, I realized I was ready to take the next step. I reached for her hand and took a deep breath. "I love you too, Lisa, and I want to build a future together, one where we support and uplift each other, no matter what challenges come our way." As I looked into her eyes, I saw a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. I knew that I had finally found a partner who valued me for who I was, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. When we returned home from our trip, I continued to reflect on my journey. I had learned so much about myself and what I wanted in a relationship. I had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, and I knew that the lessons I had learned would guide me as I continued to grow alongside Lisa. I also realized that I wanted to share my story, not to dwell on the pain of my past, but to inspire others who might be going through similar experiences. I wanted to show them that healing was possible, that it was okay to let go of what no longer served them, and that love could flourish again after heartbreak. So I took a leap of faith and decided to write it all down. I documented my journey, sharing my thoughts and feelings, the ups and downs, and the ultimate triumph of finding love again. I posted it online, hoping it would resonate with others who had faced their own struggles. The response was overwhelming. I received messages from people who had experienced betrayal, those who were in the process of healing, and even from individuals who had found new love after heartache. It felt good to connect with others and share my story, and in doing so, I realized that I had turned my pain into something beautiful. As I continued to create new memories with Lisa and support others through their journeys, I knew that I had finally come full circle. I was no longer defined by the betrayal of my past. I was a man who had reclaimed his life, found love again, and embraced the beauty of new beginnings. And so, as I looked toward the future, I felt a sense of hope and excitement for what lay ahead. I had learned to trust again, to love fiercely, and to appreciate the incredible journey that had brought me to this moment. Life was full of surprises, and I was ready to embrace them all.